I've come to learn, and I'll tell you a story in a second about my school days, where if you can actually imagine these things, if you want to do it, it becomes incredibly easy to do it. Because once you can imagine it, you can kind of go, okay, to do an Ironman, I need to be able to run a marathon after riding for 180 Ks and swimming for 4 Ks or 3.8 Ks. Yeah, you can do that. All right, let's work on doing the swimming part. Let's work on doing the riding part. And bit by bit, brick by brick, you build that up.
Let's position you in the Scotch universe. Yep. You were at Scotch College in 2007 in Alexander House.
Yep, that's the year I left.
Yep, the year left. Tell us a little bit about your Scotch days, what you did, maybe some things that stand out from you from school, good experiences, ordinary experiences. I think you said to me some time back that was when Reverend Syme was headmaster. Yep. Tell us a little bit about the Scotch journey.
Yeah, so I joined Scotch in, I think, 2/3 the way through year 4, back when I would have been 10. Great year 4 teacher, Mr. Norman. In our class of 25, 5 of us were called James. So I ended up, that's how I picked up the name Christo, or Jimmy for a while, which I never really liked, but my head of house forced it upon me. So primary school was there from 4, 5, 6, 7. Obviously now year 7 is part of the high school, middle school system. But so year 8 through 12 was in Alexander House in senior school. Played rugby, wasn't particularly good at rugby. Tried cross country for a year with Mr. Doney, which was actually a lot of fun. I'm not really designed to be a runner, but not a good time. Mainly because he's a really good dude. Played water polo, which was probably my favourite sport growing up, because it was just, rough, tumble, wet, swimming, generally a good time.
And a lot shorter than cricket.
Yeah, my parents more or less said you're not playing cricket because you don't want to sit in the sun for 6 hours a day and watch you play.
Perfect.
Now, I'll happily watch cricket all day, but not in the sun.
Good times, ordinary times.
Good times, pretty much any humanities class.
Yep.
So there's some really good humanities teachers when I was coming through. We had Mr. Mattingly, who was, I think he left when I was in year 11, which was actually quite sad because he probably the first teacher to go, you're actually really good at a subject, and kind of got me along for the ride. And then Mr. Bradley, who was very similar.
And you've got your year 12 school.
I do.
ring.
I was asked obviously to bring a Scotch object. I couldn't find anything at all. It's either at mum and dad's house or it's just been thrown out, donated. But I noticed on my shelf I've kept my Scotch ring. I do wear it very seldomly.
Give you superpowers?
Well, I wore it to an interview at Aquinas College when I was a school teacher, and I got the job. So maybe it's like the Phantom's ring, and it actually brings me a little bit of good luck. I also wore it from Officer Selection Board when I joined the Navy, so I don't know. Maybe it brings me some luck.
Well, tell us about, you're just talking about a couple of things that you've done post-school. We find you now, and I will always say this word incorrectly depending on who I'm talking to. You're now a lieutenant.
Yes.
In the Royal Australian Navy. How'd you get there? What's the pathway?
Well, I'll start from the start. So finished school in 2007. Yep. Decided for whatever reason going to law school was a really, really good idea. Went there for 3 years. Didn't really do particularly well because I struggled to sit down and actually, read an entire textbook in a week and remember where everything was. So as much as I found it interesting, I really was keen to be a criminal lawyer. I just couldn't get through the degree, particularly with the competitiveness which the law industry has, where, I was quite happy with my credits and 1 or 2 distinctions, but that was never going to be enough. I think I failed properly Law B and thought to myself, I have no desire to ever do that again.
Either property or fail.
Or keep it for law degree.
Yeah.
And I kind of sat there and went, what else can I do? I thought, I'm going to be a school teacher. My dad said to me, what are you going to teach? I said, well, humanities, because I really liked that at school. and all my humanities teachers were really bloody good. So I'm going to, be a humanities teacher. So, all right, do that then. Really enjoyed it. Did prac at some really good schools at CBC Fremantle, which was fantastic. Mount Loy Senior High and Corpus Christi, so 3 really good Perth schools. And then I managed to snag a job at Aquinas, which obviously was far too much fun. Great kids, great school leadership, great facilities, very similar to what I had at Scotch. So it was an environment that felt really, really familiar, really comfortable to me. I coached water polo, was one of the strength conditioning coaches for the rowing team in the gym, so it was pretty easy to relate to the boys. And then the school lost an intake of year 7s, so pretty much every department had to lose a staff member. So me being the most recent staff member employed in the humanities department, well, sorry, Christo, you got to go because we got no space for you. Just wasn't that I got sacked. They didn't renew my contract because there was nothing else for me. But they were really good and actually helped me get a job at Newman College up here in Churchlands, which is a good Catholic co-ed school. There was some exceptional school leaders at that school. John Finneran, who was the headmaster at the time, really good man. Daniel Lynch, who now works for the Catholic Diocese of Perth, like really great solid leaders. And the next step for me was to get promoted up the chain away from the classroom, either in like curriculum leadership or pastoral care. And being out of the classroom didn't really appeal to me either. So one day I was down in Freo, and there was a Navy ship in, there was a submarine in, there was a stand from the Navy elite clearance divers, and I want to talk to them. And they all really like their jobs. And I thought to myself, well, they really like their jobs. I'm not too keen on my job. I think I'm going to do what they do. So I went to recruiting. I was having a look at the DFR website, wanting to be what's called a training systems officer, which was going to use my teaching skills to design and develop training for the Navy. And the commanding officer of recruiting at the time, a fantastic lady called Commander Catherine Hayes, who's actually now a mentor and quite a good friend. She said, "You don't want to do that. You want to be a maritime warfare officer," which, and my stage of career is a really cool term for I drive the ship. So I've been working at that for the last 5 years. Had some really cool experiences, done some really cool stuff, travelled quite widely. I've been to Fiji, Samoa, played rugby against the Fijian Navy once. That was good fun. Been to Guam, which is like Hawaii, but budget Hawaii. Singapore, Bangkok, and someone pays me to do it. It's great fun.
And there's a lot of pathways and there's a lot of options within that career. So alongside that, at some particular point, you regained the spark, and as you said in one of the when we talked before, the spark of getting the fitness bug again and starting training and in particular setting some goals for training, starting with, I guess, water polo to triathlon.
Yeah,
it's a pretty big leap.
So when I joined the Navy, I'm joining the military, I better get fit.
Yeah.
So I started going to the gym a lot more, got a trainer, went through officer school, really enjoyed the fitness, had a really good PTI called James Walker, who just got everyone excited about fitness. And then kind of, cool, all right, what do I do now? And I was actually cruising on YouTube one day, and I found this video about this guy who decided he was going to do an Ironman, so the full one. I thought, oh, that looks pretty cool. There's a theme here. I see something that looks cool, and I go after it. So yeah, I decided I was going to do that, and start off with a half Ironman, which seemed like a good idea at the time, and eventually did the full.
What was your first experience in terms of the theory versus the reality of doing the first full Ironman?
Well,
your expectation versus...
I thought it was going to be really hard. This might sound a bit weird, but it wasn't. The hardest thing about doing an Ironman was actually training for an Ironman. So I'd spend 6 hours every for the first, probably the 3 months prior to the event. I spend 6 hours a day either on my bike, swimming, running, and my weekend's gone. The consistency of turning up to training, that I found that really tough. But what that then meant is, because I'd done that hard work previously when I turned up for the race day, and although my 13-hour time wasn't anything to set the world on fire, it was a pretty comfortable day.
Start off with just telling us what exactly defines an ultramarathon swim. What does it have to be?
So the Channel Swim and the Port de Pub both have the standard swim in a straight line, and it's 19.7 Ks or 19-ish Ks. And then I discovered there's this thing called the ultramarathon, which is a further 5 kilometers and it's 25 Ks long. And I thought, that sounds like a good idea. I've never, my first triathlon was a half Ironman, and I thought that was a really good place to start. Mm-hmm. So I thought, you know what, let's just take it up in the level for this one.
So that course still starts at Leighton?
Yes.
Then?
It goes north, comes back to the south, and then goes over to Rottnest.
Right. So you've basically swum up and down 5 or so Ks before you actually take off for Rottnest.
Correct.
I'm not sure why that's a great idea. But it's a big challenge.
I don't disagree with you.
How many do you know are swimming in that event?
I don't actually know anyone who's doing the 25K version. One of my really good friends and someone I train with is doing the standard Brolly swim in a couple of weeks' time. But I don't actually know anyone doing the... And
is there also a timeout, a time within which one must finish rule about the ultramarathon?
There is, but I'm not thinking about it because there's nothing I can do about it. I'm just got to keep swimming.
Yeah. Just keep going and get there.
Yeah.
And for the cause, and in order to give you, some fun and some extra stuff, tell us about how this ties in with the idea that you want to raise. You've got in your mind a $50,000 raise for charity.
So $50,000 is part of the bigger picture, which I'll touch on in a bit. Yeah. So the goal is to raise $5,000 for the Pirate Ship Foundation, who are a really good West Australian charity who raise money to provide research grants for childhood brain cancer. They're a charity that's been really well supported by people within my Navy network. So a couple of mates are doing, really big bike ride coming up down to Albany and back, and they've previously done the Port Pub as a team, where they actually had the event cancelled on them by the pandemic a week prior, and instead they swam in a pool for 24 hours with the team, which was I thought a really cool way to figure that one out.
A really tricky game of the mind at that point.
Yep.
And I guess, one of the things we thought would be interesting to explore with at what point in these really long swims. So you're in the water for 6-7 hours?
Sure.
Yep. Including, I guess, the training as well. Where is the physical highs and lows, and where are the psychological highs and lows that you, I guess, need to navigate and need to control?
For me, the highs tend to come at the end of it, because it is a lot of work. So I'm in a swimming pool 7 mornings a week, and the lows is just when you're 45 minutes into an hour and a half long session, you're halfway. It's like you look at your watch and you've done 2.5 Ks. Another 2.5 Ks to go. It's like, all right, but you keep doing it, and then brick by brick, you build up the week, and you kind of look at your watch and look at what you've done and go, okay, I've swam 33 Ks this week. That's pretty impressive, including the last weekend I did a 10K on Saturday with a good friend in pretty rubbish kind of swimming conditions, and we got to the end of it and went, oh, good stuff. Like, we wouldn't have done that had we not turned up together and swum it. We probably would have.
Do you find that group training and swimming at least together as opposed to you're not actually swimming in a relay, that's an absolutely necessary support? Because you do hear of some people who sort of quite freakishly it's all about them and solo brain, and they need to be by themselves and get into that zone.
Yeah, that's not me.
Yeah.
I like being around people.
Yeah.
And look, I do train on my own probably 2 or 3 times a week. I trained solo this morning, and I can tell you, when you train with people 4 or 5 times a week, that one solo session a week is actually not that much fun, because you get quite bored, and I've got some underwater headphones that plays music, and it does help. But
so how you're at sea on and off
not
for longer periods of time?
Yeah, later on in the year. So I've chosen this one as a starting point because it sits nicely with the schedule.
Right. What's training look like on a big boat for you? Tell us about the size of the boat that you're on and ship that you're on.
Yes,
who's on it, and what are the facilities, and how do you train in those conditions?
You'd be really surprised. We've actually got a really good gym. We've got treadmills, we've got bikes, we've got rowing machines, we've got squat racks. I've done squat sessions at sea before when the ship's rolling around, and once you get the hang of it, it's actually not too bad. And so I'll usually, when I'm at sea, train once a day for about an hour, because that's usually all my schedule allows for. So between my watches, where I'm up on the bridge for 4 hours at a time, I've got preparations to do for upcoming events on the ship, sleep, eat, a bit of extra sleep, particularly if I'm up at really early in the morning. So when I'm at sea, it's more about just keeping oneself a little bit sane and a bit fit and healthy.
And you're surrounded by water, but can you swim?
I have once. So I have trained. I've done laps up and down the ship in the Marianas Trench, which for context is deeper than the Everest is high. So when you got your goggles on and you got your head in the water, you're kind of looking into the abyss going, that's really far down. That was really cool. So we do that as like a swim-ex, just something to break up time at sea, have a bit of fun. And most people jump in and throw a ball around. And a mate of mine was training to join the clearance divers. So I thought, well, I'll support your training by jumping in and doing my training.
And the ship's, it's a frigate?
Yes.
It's how long?
118 metres.
Oh, so it's fairly convenient in terms of its length. You can keep track of how long you swim. Presumably it doesn't have an anchor chain as long as as 37,000 feet.
No, so we kind of just turn everything off.
Yeah.
So no one get hurt by anything, and check that there's no other ships around, and
off she floats.
Jump in and have a swim.
I'm as a taxpayer, I'm pleased to be paying for that. I think that's extraordinary. The thing that everybody talks about in open water swimming is the men in suits, the men in the grey suits. Have you ever?
Do you mean the sharks? I have seen I'm pretty sure I saw a shark back when I was 17. Final year of high school, Dad rang me and said, "Hey, you're swimming to Rottnest on Saturday." I said, "Oh, am I?" He goes, "Yeah. My mate's pulled out." So I thought, "Oh, I'm not ready for this." Because if you're playing water polo all year, mate, you'll be fine. All right, cool. So I think halfway, and it was my turn to jump in, and I saw very dark, slow-moving figure underneath me that could only have been a shark. And I got out of the water, and my father said to me, "Why'd you start swimming faster?" I said, "Well, I saw a shark." He goes, "Yeah, I thought that might be the case." But I don't know, it's interesting. Like, a lot of people are quite concerned about sharks. I've got a couple of friends who I occasionally swim with who are worried that this swim could be my last. Which, sorry if anyone's listening. I find that a bit odd, and the way I just rationalise is when the Barnett government did the shark cull those years ago, they unfortunately destroyed 250 tiger sharks, which tells me there was 250 tiger sharks out there who actually weren't bothering anybody. I've dived with sharks in Hawaii once on a holiday with a friend, and they're more inquisitive. They just come up and go, "Oh, what are you?" All right, cool, and swim off again.
What kind of wildlife? What do you see that's strange at sea from the top deck of a frigate?
Birds. You'll be miles from nowhere, and you'd literally just like a random bird flying, and it will often hitch a ride for a while and take off again.
Are we seeing more whales? Is that population seems to be exploding up and down the West Australian coast?
Yep. So when I was at sea last year, it was a constant game of keep a lookout for the whales. Let's try not to hit them, which we don't. We're pretty good at avoiding them. Dolphins will actually they'll avoid you. It's pretty cool when you're particularly up north and you look out your window and it's about 4 or 5 whales and some dolphins and then birds breaking on the surface, and yeah.
Kind of special to have that at the as your view when you get up in the morning.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
that's actually, it kind of makes some of the tough times a bit more, very much worthwhile when you get to see things which just no one else gets to see.
And debris, rubbish, pollution, floating containers, other ships, or there's a great emptiness and great loneliness, a la Moby Dick.
I like that. It's good. Yeah, a bit of rubbish. Depends where you go in the world. I'm always surprised that sometimes, there's a McDonald's cup that's floating in the middle of somewhere you haven't seen anything else for days, but that's the nature of the globe we're on, I think. It's just, yeah.
So tell us about, because I was Googling madly about these sort of the higher level aims that you're talking about. So we talked about, in due course, looking to raise $50,000 and doing that through the Australian Grand Slam the Australian
and Global Triple Crowns.
And Global Triple Crowns. And I even found something called the Double Triple Crown, which is kind of scary.
I'll go look that up.
But tell us, what are the big swims in Australia? How does, if this is the obsession, what are you ticking off to do these things? What's the challenges?
So I'm starting with the Port Pub because it's in my own backyard. I thought that'd be really easy. I'm about to find out if it's going to be really easy. The other one is the Derwent River Swim, which is the Derwent River in Tasmania.
Yep.
So it's a bit colder, but it is current assisted, so you kind of swim with the current, and that's 34 kilometres.
Yep.
If you swim it in a straight line. That's the big caveat, because you often don't. And there's the Palm to Shelley Beach Swim, which is similar to the Port Pub. So Palm Beach being where they film Home and Away.
Northern Beaches, New South Wales. Yep.
Down to Shelley Beach down there in Manly, and that's 24 kilometres.
Okay, and that's that's recognised as a...
That's the Australian Triple Crown.
Right.
Yep.
I in trying to work out what they were, there's always somebody who keeps stats on a website.
Yes.
8 people so far have completed that, it tells me. Whether that's up to date or not.
I think it's a bit more. I think it's closer to 17 Australians plus a few foreigners.
It's still small. It's still a small number of people, right?
Yeah.
And then the international,
cool.
this one called it Triple Crowns of Open Water Swimming.
Yep.
What are the big events in that?
So it's the English Channel,
right?
Which is 33 kilometres as the crow flies. Obviously, being a channel, there's currents involved, so that's the absolute minimum you'll swim. The other one is the one that really excites me is the Manhattan Island Swim,
right? Where
you swim from the top of Manhattan all the way down and then back up. So you swim on like the Brooklyn Bridge, the Williamsburg Bridge, all those big iconic buildings. And that one is, sorry, I had to write this down because I'm less enamored by the distance. I just want to go do the things, which is 45.9 kilometres.
So that's the granddaddy of them all. That's the longest one. That's and then it was on that website. Yeah.
And the last one is the Catalina Channel Swim, which is 31 k's
in California.
Yeah, California.
Right. What's in terms of the reputation and mystique of all of the races, what's the trickiest or the most challenging?
I don't know, and if you ask me in a couple of years' time when I've done them, I'll probably give you a far better answer.
And I'm sure it's got to do with on the day and where you are in your head. And
correct.
So
all these things you can't control, like the weather. Like you get what you get, and you'll find out on the day. And someone might have a really easy Rottnest Channel swim one year, and the next year it's not a great year, and two very different life experiences.
Oh no, I've accompanied by paddling a couple of them, and one of them I pulled myself out after being horribly seasick all over myself for hours, and seasick over our swimmers, which was really well received.
Poor swimmer.
So back to that website tells me that there was 331 people only internationally who had done those races.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which still isn't many in an international, endeavour. But then the double triple crown.
Please tell me what this is. I'm intrigued.
So this is doubles of each of the Triple Crown swims. So it's a tumble turn and go back. Channel swim, England, France, tumble turn, England.
Back to England.
And, Catalina, I guess, there and back, and Manhattan 2 loops.
Yep.
That sounds
pretty horrendous.
horrendous.
It can, look, it can definitely, if they've named it and someone's imagined it up, it can definitely be done.
Two people
two
on
people
the
have done
list,
it?
right?
Okay.
Probably
Probably not keen on being the third, but there is another goal at the end of all this, which
Go ahead.
I will.
if you say it out loud.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it's only one person has swum Bass Strait, so from effectively Melbourne down to Tasmania. Quite happy to be the second person to do it.
Yeah.
I wasn't actually going to say this tonight, but you baited me, and here we are, and I've put it out in the world.
We've just, all of us had our Christmas dinner and fallen asleep the next morning watching the start of the Sydney Hobart, and then woken up at the point where the big yachts are getting to Bass Strait. They do that pretty quick, and then the weather kicks in. That's a really tough stretch of water.
Yeah, and I think the weather component's a key part. So I've sailed through Bass Strait before in a ship, and you hear the stories about it, and it was lovely. So I think in terms of your prior preparation and your, monitoring the weather and your forecasting, if you get all that right, it's incredibly possible. But with all things, it costs time, money, resources. So I actually generally think it's possible to swim from England to America to retrace, the Titanic intended route. However, to do it, you would need Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk to bankroll it, because logistically it would be so incredibly difficult to actually do.
Right.
But I personally believe it's generally possible.
Well, it's a stretch goal. You've got to have stretch goals, right? That's a long-term focus, and I guess you're obviously motivated by those extensions, and maybe to sort of bring it back to that introduction part of motivating other people by motivating and achieving and demonstrating yourself. How does that feedback work for you?
Well, I used to, and still to a very large degree, think I'm a very average human being. Like, there's very little difference between me and, I don't know, Michael Phelps. We're literally just skin and bones put together, and we've figured out ways to do things. By the way, I'm not calling Michael Phelps average or compare myself to him. He's an exceptional athlete. That was the first thing that came to my mind. And I've come to learn, and I'll tell you a story in a second about my school days, where if you can actually imagine these things, if you want to do it, it becomes incredibly easy to do it. Because once you can imagine, you can kind of go, okay, to do an Ironman, I need to be able to run a marathon after riding for 180 Ks and swimming for 4Ks or 3.8 Ks. Yeah, you can do that. All right, let's work on doing the swimming part. Let's work on doing the riding part. And bit by bit, brick by brick, you build that up. I vividly remember sitting there in the old Memorial Hall, listening to one of our science teachers, Lisa Evans, talk about the Hawaii Ironman, and she's talking through distances, and there's photos. I'm like, this is ridiculous. How can anyone do this, let alone little Miss Evans? Because she was quite a slight, short teacher. And the ridiculous thing is, I was the ridiculous one sitting there going, how can anyone do this? Because, well, thousands of people do it every year.
Yep. Yeah. Is it the breaking it down into its smallest components, both, I guess, as you say, psychologically and physically, and then working out how to build them up again, how to put the bricks together? Is that the sort of the methodology that you use in your brain?
That's literally the approach.
Yeah.
Just one foot or stroke in front of the other, and you add that up a whole bunch of times, and eventually you get there.
Yeah.
So just like studying for an exam, like you're not going to cover the entire year 12 math syllabus in one night.
I think I did.
I definitely didn't. Sorry,
it didn't work for me. But
you chunk it down to little pieces, and you do fractions today. Tomorrow you do your multiplication tables. You do trigonometry the next day, and you build it up. You consolidate it, and you achieve that particular goal that you set.
Using what you've done, having broken it apart, built it up, potentially failed, then successfully achieved. How does that help you build the next leg, the next aim, the next bridge?
Well, I think this question stumped me, Mike.
Or maybe it's not how you work. Maybe I'm imagining.
No, it's a really good question because there's a lot of thought coming to mind straight away, and I think they're all part of like the same Lego set. You're just building different parts of the Lego set, and for me, that big goal, which I can't believe I've just put into the world, all these other little, well, not so little, but these other tasks along the way build a really strong foundation to then achieve that big one. And for me, it's just, okay, I've done that thing. All right, what's next? When that ends and how that ends, I don't know. I think when Ricky Ponting eventually retired from the Australian cricket team, he probably found his point. Not like Davey Warner just recently. Yeah. It's just build. I think it's just building that Lego set. Eventually, you'll achieve a whole bunch of things. I'm pretty happy with that.
And I guess it's a little bit of that cliche of it's the journey, not the destination.
Yep.
But perhaps the focus on that journey and how you achieve each step in the journey is really more important as you pass the milestones.
That's it. So if I'm doing the Triple Crown, I'm going to go to Sydney. Spent way too much time there. Don't recommend it. Sydney's all right. I'm going to go to Tasmania. I'm going to go to New York City. I'm going to go to England. I'm going to touch France before turning around again. I'm going to go to California. So the experiences along the way are really important. The people I'm going to meet, through swimming, I've much like triathlon, I've actually made some really good friends already. Some people who, had I not done these things, I just would never have met. I think in the interim, that's kind of that's the grease that keeps everything going along.
Yeah. You mentioned that you've got your underwater earphones.
Yep.
What's on your playlist?
So I think about this question because there's a lot on my playlist, and I'll give you 3 really good tracks, which I'm sure people will enjoy. Okay, you may not enjoy; they're a bit heavy. So Dad Vibes by Limp Bizkit, which is a song I've been listening to since I was about 15 years old.
There's a lot to listen to first thing in the morning.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's probably better than caffeine. I'm not sure.
Go
on. Shipping Up to Boston by the Dropkick Murphys, which ties in very nicely with my belief that if I'd grown up in a different era, I probably would have been a pirate. Hence, Christensen and the Buccaneers, which we'll talk about in a bit.
Yep.
And Passenger by Deftones, which I don't think you'll enjoy, Michael.
I don't know that one.
It's quite heavy.
So it's getting a big pumping beat to adjust yourself.
Yeah, I do listen to all sorts of other music, but for me, it's the heavier rock stuff that tends to get me excited about going to the gym or going to the pool.
Yeah. So tell us about your Buccaneers.
So Christo and the Buccaneers, it's just a fun thing I came up with one day after I dressed up like a pirate for the ship's charity, I kind of went, I could do something with this. I thought about it for a while, and I had a few ideas. I had an idea for turn that character I became, which was somewhere between Captain Blackbeard and Captain Feathersword.
So we need to just go backwards because you just skipped into this. I was a pirate once for 3 days.
That's right. I mentioned that at dinner, not here. Yeah. So I got asked one day to dress up like a pirate to support a charity at work, namely the Pirate Ship Foundation. For some reason, the boss thought it would be fun. I'd be a good fit. Sure enough, and I put on this. I'll provide you the photo, Michael. So I'm sure it'll be on screen very shortly. I put on this pirate suit, and I became Captain Christo Sword. And
but this wasn't a 10-minute tin rattle.
It was a bit of tin rattling going on. There was some theatrics where I actually led the captain to jump off the plank, which the ship's company had built for him to jump off, and he did it with good grace. Once we achieved, I can't remember what the amount of money was, but it was a decent amount of money, and yeah.
So, and it exists since then.
That idea's existed since then.
Yeah.
So I had an idea, which I don't know where I got it from, to turn Captain Christo's sword into a bit of a mental health for teenagers or preteen character, and then I realised I'm actually not that creative. I'll leave that to the drama kids. And then I thought, I'm going to Rot Nest. I should have a really cool team name. I'm going to call it Christo and the Buccaneers, because that sounds like fun.
Perfect. And it goes on a T-shirt.
That's it. It goes on a T-shirt. I've bought one along.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So that's a little design there. The Rot Nest lighthouse and me swimming and my crew on a pirate ship. I've also got the Pirate Ship Foundation logo in there as well.
Nice.
So with the Buccaneers, everyone always asks who are the Buccaneers. It's just my mates who come along for the ride, because you can't really swim to Rot Nest or swim these distances without a team around you, whether that be my coach, my gym coach, my squad mates, a couple of mentors I've got in that field, and my friends who decided that swimming the long way to the Rot Nest pub sounds like a great way to spend Saturday.
It's like a slow way to get a drink.
It's a very slow way to get a beer, yeah.
And hopefully with our timing right, just tell us how people can donate to that.
So I have a link,
Yep.
which I'm assuming you guys will put in the show notes.
I think we do this, and then they put something on the screen.
Fabulous.
Like and subscribe.
Yep, like and subscribe. Yeah, I'll put it in the show notes.
Perfect.
Every cent counts. At time of filming, we're up to $1,600, which at this stage, the biggest donation is still my mother. Which
God bless.
God bless, yeah, which a lot of my mates still pull the piss out of you for. But, every dollar counts, and if everyone who watches this, which is, I don't know, maybe 100 people watch it, everyone puts $1, it's an extra $100 that goes towards, raise money with charity.
Perfect. Well, we will be. What's the date of the? It's the 16th of March.
Correct. Yeah, 16th of March on a Saturday.
Which by the time we get this out, but it's 40 days from today, so the clock's ticking.
It is.
And we wish you great weather and calm seas, both for the swimming and for looking after us when you're on board boat.
Yep. Ship.
On ship. I've got to stop saying boat. Look out for Christo and the Buccaneers. We'll support you, and we'll look forward to you touching and struggling up the beach at the other end.
Fabulous.
Thanks for talking to us.
Thank you. Thanks for
Cheers.
having me. Bye.